We start today's episode just as Ash gets to Mount Silver. The tall mountain of Johto standing right in front of him. He takes in a deep breath, recalling the past. He remembers the last time he was at Mount Silver, and wonders if he'll run into an old friend here. With this, he begins his ascent. Calling out Dragonite, Ash flies up the mountainside, trying to see if he can locate any Tyranitar. At first, there seems to be no signs of any. That is until he hears a loud roar. Immediately, Dragonite flies in the direction of the roar, only for a Hyper Beam to fire up into the sky, barely missing the pseudo-legendary Ander trainer. Looking down below, Ash sees a group of Tyranitar, watching two of their species battling it out. One is clearly superior to the other, easily taking hits from its opponent while dealing much more damage. Ash watches on, absolutely amazed, before realizing that this group might be what he's looking for. He looks around, only to unfortunately find there's no signs of Goh. Despite this, Ash figures it would be best to go down there. So he lands, calling Dragonite back into her Pokeball. Ash walks up to the Tyranitar group, trying not to bring too much attention to himself. The two Tyranitar continue fighting, with the stronger of the two bashing its head against the other, before firing a point-blank Ice Beam. This freezes the opposing Tyranitar, declaring the first one as the winner. The Tyranitar celebrate, but is cut short by a Skarmory blasting through the group with a Sky Attack. Ash looks over, seeing two people dressed in gray, with large red R's emblazoned on their chests, as they attempt to nab every one of the Tyranitar. The one that was just in battle attempts to fire off a Fire Blast, but a Steelix erupts from underground, striking with a dig. The Steelix and Skarmory both hit each of the Tyranitar hard, and Ash, not wanting to simply stand by and watch, brings out Thwackey and Marshtomp in order to combat these members of Team Rocket. A Rock Smash from Marshtomp hits Steelix, while a Grassy Glide manages to land against Skarmory. Ash calls out to the Team Rocket members, who are a little shocked the boy already recognizes them. They introduce themselves as the elite officers, Attila and Hun, and with that, they easily knock back Ash's two starter Pokemon. Just as Ash is about to bring in another Pokemon, someone calls out a Charizard, addressing it as Zippo, and orders for a Fire Blast. The Charizard flies high into the air, blasting the two Team Rocket Pokemon with flames. Attila and Hun groan, calling their Pokemon back for now, before disappearing. The Charizard lands, with its trainer running up to join him. That's when Ash realizes the trainer who just intervened was none other than his old friend Richie. The two greet each other happily, having reunited for the first time since Johto. Ash congratulates Richie, as the last time he saw Zippo, it was just a Charmeleon. Richie tells Ash that he continued his travels, going all around the world for a while. However, he'd been spending a lot of time in Mount Silver training, revealing he had recently been knocked out of the Ultra class of the World Championships. Ash reveals that he's in the World Championships as well, and asks if Richie would like to battle. Richie declines, saying that for the time being, the main priority should be looking after the Tyranitar. This group of Tyranitar is strong, especially their leader, but Team Rocket's dirty fighting tactics have always given them the edge. Ash asks why Richie chose Mount Silver to train at, to which Richie says it's because of the Tyranitar, and him wanting to train his own, sending out Cruz, who is now evolved from Pupitar into Tyranitar. Richie tells Ash that he had heard about a group of Tyranitar living around Mount Silver that were said to be pretty strong, so he figured he could learn a thing or two from them. He's been training here for quite a while, aiming to be strong enough to get back into the Ultra class, and eventually make it into the Masters 8. However, with Team Rocket being around, a lot of his time has been focused less on training and more on keeping them at bay. Unfortunately, another trainer recently showed up, and was quickly defeated by their underhanded tactics. So making sure he's alright has taken up Richie's time as well. Ash asks if the trainer's name happens to be Goh, to which Richie says he's not sure. He only saw it as the trainer tried to fight Team Rocket. He seemed to be very adamant about defeating them, almost to a point of hatred. However, he hasn't gotten to know the trainer well yet, but he is currently resting in his tent not too far from here. Richie takes Ash to where he'd been camping out, and sure enough, Goh is within the tent. Goh apologizes that he wasn't able to do much against Team Rocket, especially after the training he put in the Isle of Armor. He didn't even get a chance to send out Urshifu before he was injured by this new Rocket duo. Richie asks what an Urshifu is, to which Goh shows off the fighting type legendary. Richie is amazed, saying if Goh had managed to use this against Team Rocket, they probably would have stood a better chance. Goh asks who Richie is, to which Ash explains it's a friend from back when he challenged the Indigo League. Richie's a strong trainer who's traveled to all sorts of different regions, just like him. After Goh and Richie get acquainted, they hear something outside the tent. Leaving, they see the leader Tyranitar had followed them. The three figure that Tyranitar simply wants to help them get rid of Team Rocket, and so they begin to come up with a plan for it. Throughout, Ash notices that this Tyranitar is distrusting of Goh, and while not as much so around Richie, Ash did see that Tyranitar was standoffish around him as well. Strangely enough, the only one Tyranitar seemed completely comfortable around was Ash himself. Ash wasn't sure why, but he had a strange feeling he'd seen this Tyranitar somewhere before. The group begins planning. Attila and Hun are already shown to have steel types in Pokemon like Skarmory and Steelix. Ash, being friends with a certain Pokemon doctor, has gotten plenty of experience handling Steelix, so he offers to take down Hun. Tyranitar also shows interest in handling the Steely Snake Pokemon, to which Ash says will be really helpful, knowing Tyranitar has the move Fire Blast. As for Skarmory, Richie and Goh will have to take care of that. Luckily, with help from Zippo, they could handle the aerial assault. Meanwhile, Goh, Cinderace, and Urshifu could provide support should Attila send out any other Pokemon. Other than that, the plan to lure Team Rocket out was simple. They would stage a battle between this leader Tyranitar and Richie's crews. This will make Team Rocket believe the Tyranitar group are distracted and attempt to strike. With those being the main problem, their attack plan will be easy. Little do they know, the Rocket trio they're familiar with have just arrived, meeting up with Attila and Hun in order to provide support. Attila and Hun tell the trio that things got a little more complicated, as there's now two trainers who are able to take them on. The newer one was quickly defeated before, but if these two trainers team up and start planning a way to get rid of them completely, it could spell trouble for them. Fortunately, with numbers on their side, and depending on what Jesse and James can provide, they should be able to do more. The trio's plan to stop Team Rocket goes underway, and Cruz begins to stage a sandstorm-filled fight with the leader Tyranitar. However, rather than Skarmory attacking, a strange steam fills the area, before many of the Tyranitar, including Cruz, disappear below the steam. Richie calls out a new member of his team, a Flygon, named Dune, in order to use Defog to get rid of this strange steam. But as soon as Flygon comes out, Team Rocket strikes. Skarmory and Steelix appear, attacking Dune all at once. When the strange steam begins to dissipate, they notice each of the Tyranitar have been captured in multiple sand tombs, courtesy of Jesse's Sandaconda. Ash calls on Marshtomp to assist, blocking an attack from James's Morpeko. However, When Marshtomp attempts to strike back, Jessie brings in Wobbuffet to counter and mirror coat anything Ash tries. However, after a while, Marshtomp tries to find a way to do the same thing. It does some of the moves it had been practicing with Ash, and it slowly begins to manifest a counter of its own. However, it's still incomplete. Wobbuffet notices this, and actually starts teaching Marshtomp how to use counter and mirror coat. The battle does continue, however, and with there being double the amount of Team Rocket members this time, it's become increasingly difficult for them to enact their plan to protect the Tyranitar. Ash calls out Dragonite to help out as well, using Aqua Tail to quickly take down Jessie's Sandaconda. However, Attila and Hun are able to take advantage of this, and with Attila calling in Amok, he's able to poison Dragonite, causing her to be knocked out of the sky as well. This is when the leader Tyranitar steps up. Ash asks if it wants to battle by his side for the time being, and Tyranitar nods, before it starts to battle Attila and Hun. Richie also joins in with Zippo, and the two are able to take down Muck. However, when Skarmory and Steelix start teaming up on the two of them after beating Dune the Flygon, they start to struggle a bit more. Goh tries to join them, but he's caught up in fighting James's new Galarian Weezing. Skarmory and Steelix give Tyranitar and Zippo a beating, so the two send out their Pikachu. However, Pikachu and Sparky still aren't able to do much against Steelix, despite Sparky's coverage. However, when Steelix is about to take the two out, Tyranitar steps in, using Iron Defense. But this move reminds Ash of something. Maybe it was the way Tyranitar did the move, as it gave off a shy look on its face while curling up slightly and shutting its eyes. Ash recognizes this, remembering it from his travels in Johto. That's when he realizes this isn't just any regular Tyranitar. This was the one he'd met before. This was the Larvitar he'd traveled with. Ash apologizes to Tyranitar for not realizing this sooner, as Tyranitar must have recognized him. That was probably why Tyranitar seemed comfortable around him despite not liking Goh and Richie. It also explained why it absolutely despised Team Rocket from the get-go, due to its history with Pokemon poachers. Now, with Ash knowing who Tyranitar is, the two battle together at full force, in much better sync. This actually catches Attila and Hun off guard, as now the two seem to be a lot stronger together. However, they still have the advantage against it, but that's where Zippo comes in. Richie sighs, saying he didn't want to show everything he has just yet, but if it means getting rid of Team Rocket, he'll do what he can. With that, he reveals a small rainbow-colored stone within his possession, and using it, he Mega Evolves Zippo, transforming it into Mega Charizard Y. Now, with the two powerful Kanto trainers working side by side, a dual Fire Blast in the sunny weather set up by Zippo is enough to take out the two Rocket members, even making it difficult for them to escape. That way, they could be turned over to the police. As for our main Team Rocket trio, we're gonna get something interesting. After Attila and Hun are defeated, Jessie and James are worried they'll get blasted off as usual. But Ash actually doesn't do anything. Goh and Richie feel they should get rid of them too, otherwise they could still attempt to catch the Tyranitar. However, Ash notices that Wobbuffet had been training Marshtomp, and the move he was trying to teach Marshtomp was now perfected, while also helping Marshtomp get another move at the same time. So, Ash decides to let one of his Pokemon decide, that being Thwackey. Thwackey looks from the Team Rocket trio to the team of Ash, Goh, and Richie, before saying something to Meowth. Meowth translates it as simply, "Leave and don't come back here." Seeing it as for their own good, they do just that. Everyone's a little surprised that Ash is letting them go, but Ash says that Thwacky is the closest to Team Rocket, so he felt it should be the one to decide what happens to them. At this moment, we're going to cut away briefly, as with Attila and Hun getting arrested, the Team Rocket trio have to tell Giovanni what happened. They informed him that they failed the mission, as the two twerps they normally face, as well as a new one with a Mega Charizard, had taken down Attila and Hun. However, they managed to escape. Giovanni is disappointed in Attila and Hun, but figures that not losing every member sent on the mission is a good thing, even if it was this trio rather than the two elites. Giovanni then tells them to wait for orders from Matori before signing off. We cut back to Mount Silver as Attila and Hun are being arrested. Officer Jenny thanks the trio for stopping them. It's been a while since the Tyranitar in this area have had a great deal of a threat they couldn't handle themselves. Most other poachers would get run off by the Tyranitar currently by Ash's side. As Officer Jenny speeds away, Ash looks over to Tyranitar. He says he's glad to see that little Larvitar he once knew is a strong leader of this group. He asks if Tyranitar's mom is doing alright, to which Tyranitar nods, before leading them to a cave. Inside is another Tyranitar that Ash recognizes as the mother. He says hello, and tells the mother Tyranitar that her son is very strong, and he's glad he got to see them again. As Ash turns to leave, the mother Tyranitar stops him, indicating towards her child. Ash is confused, not because he doesn't understand what she means, but why. He asks why the mother would want Tyranitar to go with him. After all, back in Johto, they took so much time trying to reunite them. Plus, Tyranitar was now a leader here, so was it really okay for him to leave? Soon Ash comes to understand. Despite what he said, the mother is insistent, and Ash finds that, even despite what he had said, it was okay for Tyranitar to join him. He even sees that Tyranitar is wanting to join his team as well. It's not just his mother's encouragement. So with that, Ash takes out a Pokeball. And after they're traveling in Johto, and all the time they spent apart, Tyranitar finally joins Ash's team. Now with this strong addition, Ash feels more fired up than ever to battle, using each one of them. Pikachu, Scyther, Dragonite, Gengar, Lucario, Galarian Darmanitan, Thwacky, Marshtomp, and finally, Tyranitar. There's a lot they can do to grow, but he knows that he can make his way to the Master's aid. That's when Ash gets a notification. His first Ultra Class battle has been scheduled, and it's against a trainer he's never met before. However, Richie knows the trainer all too well. Richie tells him that this trainer is strong. Some say he's as strong as the current Kanto and Johto champion, Lance. This is a trainer from Johto, by the name of Jimmy, and he was the one who knocked Richie out of the Ultra Class. Ash takes note of this. The battle is the next day at the Silvertown Stadium, and so Ash doesn't have too much time to prepare. However, with Silvertown being at the base of Mount Silver, he doesn't have to worry about being late. So he asks Richie and Goh to help him train, which they gladly agree to. Richie brings out Zippo, saying that one of Jimmy's strongest Pokemon is his Typhlosion. In fact, Typhlosion was the one who took him out in the end, even though Zippo Mega Evolved. The other member of Jimmy's team he saw was his Beedrill, which was also very strong. Goh says that should mean if the battle is a 2-on-2, then Ash wouldn't have to worry, because he'll know the exact members Jimmy is going to use. That's when Richie informs them the rules of the Ultra Class are different. Battles are either 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 double battles. So despite this, Richie can only help him train against 2 members, meaning Ash will be going in blind against at least one Pokemon. Ash makes note of this, and decides that Tyranitar will be his main choice in Pokemon. After all, Tyranitar should be able to handle Fire-type attacks well, and with Tyranitar's Fire Blast, it should be able to do a lot of damage to Beedrill. Goh also notes that Tyranitar's Sandstream ability will do residual damage over time as long as the sandstorm continues. As for the next Pokemon, Ash decides he'll use Marshtomp, who won't take damage from Sandstorm, and will be able to hit Typhlosion super effectively. With that, Ash begins training, him taking on Richie's Zippo, as well as Go's Slowking, seeing as both have the typings of the Pokemon Jimmy will most likely be using. The training is very tough, especially with Zippo being Mega Evolved. Marshtomp is able to hold Zippo back a bit using Mirror Coat, but Ash is struggling in the double battle. In the end, Richie and Goh actually end up beating him together. Ash isn't going to give up though, so he continues training, trying to come up with some new strategies. As they battle, Ash tries to think of ways he can do damage other than through attacking. Counter and Mirror Coat are good defensive options to use his opponent's power against them. Sandstream will help with residual damage unless a Rock, Ground, or Steel type is sent out. What else could he do? That's when he gets an idea. He talks with Tyranitar, and the two begin training again. After training endlessly into the night, the move is perfected. What is it? Well, you'll have to wait and see. After resting up and doing some more strategizing, Ash is ready to battle once morning comes. He, Richie, and Goh fly down Mount Silver and make it to Silvertown. It's there they run into a familiar face, Vincent, who's come to Silvertown alongside his friend Marina in order to watch the battle. Ash remembers Vincent from the Johto League, and as the two had battled, Vincent says he may have lost to Ash in the past, but Ash shouldn't think Jimmy will be any easier to defeat. Jimmy had taken part in the Silver Conference long before he or Ash did, and Jimmy actually won. He even battled Lance a few times. No one's really sure who's stronger between the two, but Marina and Vincent are both sure that Jimmy will make it to the Masters 8. Ash gets ready for the battle to begin. The pressure is definitely on. If Jimmy is considered as strong as Lance, then that would mean he had the power to be the second strongest trainer in the world, and could contest Leon. This would be a tough opponent, and he didn't even know what all Jimmy would end up using. Ash is called onto the battlefield. It's now or never. He takes in a deep breath and walks out to the stadium. It's at this point where he meets Jimmy for the first time. The two trainers introduce themselves and shake hands. Jimmy makes a comment about he looks a little like Richie, and asks if the two are related. Ash chuckles, saying the two are just friends, who've known each other since the Indigo League conference. Jimmy nods, saying he hopes Ash puts up a good fight. He wants to face off against both Lance and Leon, so he needs strong opponents to get him ready. The referee announces the battle will be a 3-on-3, utilizing the same in-battle rules as the normal and great classes. With that, Ash gets ready and sends out Tyranitar. Tyranitar bursts forth and immediately Sandstream activates. Unfortunately for Ash, Jimmy's first Pokemon was the perfect counter. A Donphan. The ground type wouldn't be harmed by the Sandstorm at all. Ash has his other strategy, but he's unsure whether now is the best time to set it up. He calls for an Ice Beam, but Donphan dodges by using Rapid Spin. This is how Ash realizes his other strategy won't work just yet. The move he wants to use? He remembers Richie telling him that moves like Defog and Rapid Spin could cancel it out. So he's going to need to take Donphan out first. He swaps out Tyranitar, bringing in Dragonite instead. He sets up with Dragon Dance before having Dragonite go flying in with Aqua Tail. However, Donphan is able to take the hit and counter with a knockoff. Jimmy then calls for a move Ash wasn't expecting: Ice Shard. The Ice-type move hits hard and knocks Dragonite to the ground. Ash can tell she can't take too much more of those super effective hits, so he needs to act fast. Ash tells Dragonite to use Dual Wing Beat quickly, but Jimmy counters with Rapid Spin. The two Pokemon collide with each other, before Jimmy calls for another Ice Shard, taking Dragonite out. Ash is now down a Pokemon. He can see why Richie was defeated by this guy. Dragonite normally takes hits well, but Donphan was able to hit Dragonite hard enough to take her out in the end. Ash then thinks the Sandstorm also wasn't helpful here, as it gave Dragonite a disadvantage by harming her, slowly chipping away at her stamina. Ash decides he'll have to send in his other defensive Pokemon, Marshtomp. The Mudfish comes out happily, and ready for its first World Championships match. Ash warns it that Donphan is strong though, and that they need to be on guard. Fortunately, Ash has already begun thinking up a plan. He uses a tactic from a battle long ago in his Johto Journeys. As Jimmy's Donphan begins to roll around with Rapid Spin again, Ash has his Marshtomp use Water Gun to dig trenches in the battlefield. This messes up Donphan's rolling, and so Ash is able to hit it with a Mud Shot. Jimmy gets Donphan back on track and has it use Ice Shard. However, Ash doesn't mind, having Marshtomp take the hit and use Counter, which actually manages to take Donphan out, something that surprises the audience. In the crowd, Goh cheers Ash on, but Richie tells him that the real battle has just begun. Jimmy brings out his Typhlosion, a move which Goh is surprised by, as Typhlosion is weak to both water and ground. However, it soon becomes apparent why he chose his ace Pokemon so soon in the battle, as Jimmy calls for Solar Beam. Ash calls for a Mud Shot, which does help lower Typhlosion's speed, but the Solar Beam fires with great force. Ash calls for a Mirror Coat, and Marshtomp barely manages to hang in there long enough for the counterattack. The Mirror Coat's reflection of Solar Beam hits Typhlosion hard, but it's not enough to defeat the Fire-type Pokemon. Jimmy's Typhlosion uses Flamethrower, and Marshtomp is taken down, just as the Sandstorm fades away. Ash is down to his last Pokemon, and so he sends out Tyranitar. Tyranitar roars as the new Sandstream fills the area. Jimmy calls out to Ash that he definitely seems to have some special strategies and strong Pokemon, but that's not going to get him the win in the end. Ash smiles, turning his hat backwards. He tells Jimmy that he's just getting started, but Jimmy just chuckles. As he starts to call back Typhlosion, he hears Ash's next move, Stealth Rock. He's already made the call to switch out. But now he feels it's not the best idea. Still, he has to commit to the action. So he calls back Typhlosion and brings out Beedrill, who gets harmed by the Stealth Rocks. Still, despite this, Jimmy looks like he believes the win is still his. He calls for Beedrill to use Drill Run, which hits Tyranitar hard. However, with the bug type up close, Ash calls for a point-blank Fire Blast. Beedrill takes the hit, but the damage made is clear. Still, Beedrill is much faster, so Jimmy calls for Beedrill to fly in and out of range and use multiple poison jabs. Beedrill keeps fighting, taking the Sandstorm damage, but because of its speedy yet defensive flight pattern, it makes it more difficult for Tyranitar to attack. The only thing it can do is defend against the blows. After a few consecutive jabs, Jimmy calls for U-turn, swapping out once again, bringing back Typhlosion into the fight. Typhlosion takes damage from the Sandstorm and the Stealth Rocks, but still looks fighting fit. Jimmy then keeps up the quick-paced attacks by having Typhlosion use Quick Attack to move around the battlefield. Typhlosion runs in to attack, but Ash counterattacks with Crunch. With Typhlosion getting up close, Tyranitar is able to hit it hard, although now, Jimmy knows he'll have to fight at a distance, so he has Typhlosion get back in order to use a Focus Blast. Ash smiles, calling for an Ice Beam on the field. As Typhlosion attempts to hit the Focus Blast, the attack goes off course. Jimmy is very confused by this, as Typhlosion had already managed to locate Tyranitar even in the sandstorm. However, he then sees the hulking, massive Pokemon sliding across the field, running straight into Typhlosion, where it picks up with a crunch and slams it into the icy field. The sandstorm disappears, as Tyranitar roars once again, and Jimmy sees what Ash had done. He smirks, asking if this was Ash's strategy. Ash nods, and the crowd sees the field has been completely frozen over. Jimmy brings out Beedrill, and this is when he reveals his trump card, pulling out a Keystone and Mega Evolving the Bug-type Pokemon. Beedrill, despite the damage it took from Stealth Rock, and in the previous encounter with Tyranitar, still puts up a good fight as it flies around. Ash's Tyranitar is able to keep up though, as it slides around on the icy battlefield in order to catch up and attack. The two battle long and hard, but in the end, Ash finally comes up with a strategy. He times Beedrill's movements, and hits it with an Ice Beam, freezing its wings. Then, firing off another Fire Blast, Ash manages to take Beedrill out. He and Tyranitar have won the battle. This is a dramatic upset, as many people, including the announcer, saw Jimmy as a trainer on par with Lance. So if this Pallet Town trainer was able to beat Jimmy, just how far would he go? Jimmy meets up with Ash, congratulating him on a well-fought battle. He hopes that Ash gets farther in the Ultra class, and that they can battle again sometime. Ash agrees to battle Jimmy in the future, as he's sure Tyranitar would also like to face Typhlosion and Beedrill again. The two shake hands, ending the battle on a good note. With that, Ash meets back up with Richie, who says he's going to go back to Mount Silver for a bit. Team Rocket might still return, and if they do, without their leader, the Tyranitar might have more trouble facing off against them. Plus, he wants to get in more training in order to get back into the Ultra class. When he's finally there, he hopes the two of them can battle. With that agreement made, the two part ways. Richie heading back up the mountain, and the duo of Ash and Goh heading back to Vermilion City. Their time in Kanto is short-lived, though, as Ash gets a letter. It's from Cynthia, surprisingly, and she's invited him to Sinnoh for a festival. There will be celebrating Sinnoh's history in many different ways, one of which is the multi-battle, officially sanctioned by the World Championships. Per her own request, Ash has been selected as one of those trainers for the battle. He's got a few days before the festival actually begins, but he'll still need to get there as soon as possible. Ash tells Goh about the festival, and finding it really interesting, Goh agrees to join him. The two then decide to go get Chloe, in order to see if she's interested. At first she declines, saying she'll still have school the whole week. However, Professor Cerise joins in, saying he can talk to Chloe's teachers about her absence and work something out. Chloe thanks him, and since her only problem would be taken care of, she gladly accepts their invitation to join them. So with that, they're off to Sinnoh. We cut to the inside of Mount Coronet. A group of people, in the familiar attire of Team Galactic, are searching through the depths, when they find a cavern area not normally seen by the typical groups of people who explore the mountain in Sinnoh's center. The group search through the cavern until they finally find what they're looking for. A large, multicolored jewel that seems to be overflowing with energy. One of the galactic grunts informs their commander, Jupiter, that they found what they're looking for. Jupiter thanks them, saying to get the legend plate out of there and bring it back to HQ. Once the grunts are gone, she calls up a cohort from a different region. It's Oleana, whom she informs that they've found the legend plate. Once they're done with it, they'll turn it over to her boss. What they want it for, she doesn't care, so long as they're able to use it to bring back Cyrus first. Oleana says she'll send over some Macrocosmos men to pick it up in a few days. That should give them plenty of time to get their affairs in order. With that, Oleana signs off. Jupiter groans. She really doesn't like that Oleana person. However, some good news comes, as fellow commanders Mars and Saturn call in, informing her that they found the 2 items needed in order to bring out the true power of the legends they tried so desperately to control for Cyrus's plans all that time ago. Now they just need to locate and Roars are heard simultaneously from both calls, before the calls go dead. Jupiter isn't worried, though. Saturn and Mars had already been prepared for this mission. Sure, the legendary Pokemon of time and space were powerful, but they had already strategized for this exact encounter. Now all she had to do was wait for their return. And that's where we'll be leaving things for right now. So what do you guys think? Are you happy to see the returns of 2 characters that in canon we only got cameos of during Journeys? How do you feel about Ash and Tyranitar being reunited after all this time? And finally, are you ready for us to venture into Sinnoh and see what Team Galactic's plans are? As well as who those plans will get the attention of?